Be prepared to pay more if you're out shopping this week. Prices are edging up just before Chinese New Year. If you love CNY snacks but are counting calories, we'll have tips on how to avoid overeating this festive season. And tennis star Emma Raducanu has been spotted for the second day in a row practicing in Singapore. You're watching The Big Story. I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. It's that time of the year again. Food prices are rising just before the Chinese New Year holiday. At wet markets across the island today, some sellers doubling their prices for popular fish like white pomfret and red grouper. They're blaming it on a lack of supply due to merchants in China snapping up much of the available stock. Vegetables like tomatoes and leafy greens are also more expensive this week. Just like the fish, it's a supply issue here as well, with stall holders telling the Straits Times that vegetable supplies are still affected by the aftermath of the floods in Malaysia. Some are also blaming it on a shortage of manpower. Meanwhile, bakwa also more expensive. For instance, a 500-gram pack of Lim Chee Guan's signature sliced pork costs $2 more than last year. But that's not deterring customers at its flagship store in Chinatown, with long queues forming since first thing this morning.
The signature pork is sold out, so I'm now looking for alternatives. So I'm searching online right now for the best recommended bakwas in Singapore. My family actually eats vegetarian, but it's only for myself and my friends.
No, I get the trims. The perfect one, the squarish one is sold out. The whole piece is sold out. It's okay. The taste the same. It's just that it's in the smaller bite piece. It's my favorite. You're my favorite.
我觉得林志源的牌子，它的肉会比较软一些，比较好吃，味道也很好。
就你觉得排队是值得的？
今天是值得了，因为今天好像比较少人，所以我觉得还 OK。
Well, speaking of Chinese New Year goodies, later in the show, I'll be getting some tips on how not to overeat during the festive season. Despite the huge challenges brought on by the pandemic, Singapore is still seen as a choice location for new investments and business expansion. In 2021, Singapore attracted $11.8 billion in fixed asset investments thanks to large manufacturing projects from semiconductor and biotech firms. The projects secured are expected to create over 17,300 new jobs in the next 5 years, with most of them going to locals. The investments exceeded the Singapore Economic Development Board's medium to long-term yearly target of between $8 and $10 billion, but they were lower than the $17.2 billion drawn in 2020. To discuss these results, I'm pleased to have Mr. Damien Chan, Executive Vice President at EDB. Welcome to the show, Damien. So, I guess a hard question to start. Are you disappointed that Singapore did not attract as much fixed asset investments in 2021 compared with 2020, especially considering that last year was meant to be a year of recovery?
So we are heartened by the results we've seen in terms of the fixed asset investments, total business expenditure, and also the jobs created. They are all within with our medium to long-term targets. In fact, for fixed asset investments at 11.8 billion Singapore dollars, it exceeds our medium to long-term targets of 8 to 10 billion dollars a year. We are heartened by this because we see this as an affirmation of Singapore as the preferred location for companies to set up regional and even global headquarters to capture the growth, especially in the Asia-Pacific region. And it also reflects Singapore's position as a critical node in the supply chain as well. We must also see that the 2020 results for EDB was exceptional, and this was mentioned also last year as well, and we do not expect to repeat this in 2021. The year 2021 was also challenging because of global travel restrictions. It was difficult for companies to conduct feasibility studies, to come to Singapore to do such studies. And also that the recovery across different sectors was uneven, and that there were still companies which were going through restructuring.
Well, Damien, building on what you said, what is Singapore's strategy for this year? What are the high growth areas that will create the most jobs for Singaporeans?
We are still having many project discussions in areas which contributed to 2021's good results. So this includes companies in the semiconductors, electronics, and in the biomedical space. So talking to companies, for instance, in the semiconductor industry, they do continue to see strong demand in this space going into next year, maybe even the year after as well. Beyond that, we see that COVID has, as we all know, accelerated the digitalization trend across industries. So we expect to see strong opportunities in the space of digital economy. The other area is green economy, where companies and countries across the world continue to prioritize and embark on decarbonization opportunities and imperatives, and also for them to look at making more sustainable products. So we see green economy as also another early, but developing area for opportunity for us in 2022 and beyond.
Mm-hmm. And Damien, what more can Singapore do to put itself in an even better position to attract key players or projects?
Of course, one thing we need to do is to continue to further open up and restore connectivity, especially in terms of business travel. The other thing is that we need to continue to further build up our infrastructure to meet the needs of whether we talk about some of the new areas like digital economy as well as green economy. Right? Like for instance, building infrastructure to continue to meet the needs of the semiconductor industry, and also infrastructure which eventually will allow us to do more carbon capture, which will help companies' operations here in Singapore to decarbonize. Because the other thing which is absolutely critical is for Singapore to continue to ensure that we build capabilities amongst the Singaporean workforce, both for existing as well as the newer industries, that we are also open at the same time to international talent to augment as well as to supplement the Singaporean workforce as well.
Well, thanks for your time, Damien Chan, Executive Vice President at the Singapore Economic Development Board. Also in the news, the Foreign Ministry is advising Singaporeans to defer all travel to Ukraine in view of the escalating tensions and evolving situation there. Singaporeans who are in Ukraine should remain vigilant, monitor local news closely, and if they haven't already done so, e-register with MFA. It comes amid concerns about Russia's troop buildup near its border with Ukraine. The Singapore government will donate $50,000 to support Tonga's relief and recovery efforts following the devastating underwater volcanic eruption and tsunami. This donation will be made through the Singapore Red Cross and supplements SRC's own pledge of 50,000 Sing dollars on January 18th. In a letter, Foreign Affairs Minister Vivian Balakrishnan extended his deepest condolences to the people in Tonga affected by this disaster. A star sighting in Singapore with reigning US Open champion Emma Raducanu spotted practicing at the Tanglin Club for a second straight day. The 19-year-old is understood to be transiting here for a week after her exit from the ongoing Australian Open. Not quite the size of a Grand Slam crowd, but over 30 onlookers catching a glimpse of Raducanu from the pavement along Claymore Hill and another 50 or so watching from a balcony above the tennis courts. From love letters to pineapple tarts to my personal favorite, spicy prawn rolls, the temptation to overeat during Chinese New Year will be a huge one. In today's Living Well segment, we'll be getting a few tips on how to avoid overindulging during the festive season, especially in foods that are high in salt, sugar and fat content. When you overeat, it's not just a surge in calories that you need to worry about. Overeating for prolonged periods may also lead to health problems later on. Well, let's get some healthy advice from Derek Ong. He's an accredited dietitian and founder of Eat Right Nutrition Consultancy and Clinic. Welcome to the show, Derek. So first of all, what is considered overeating? Is it eating to the point of feeling totally stuffed?
Well, actually, everyone has a different point at which they are overeating. So you kind of have to look at to see what you're used to eating, in a regular meal, and then if you're eating beyond that point, then then you would consider that as overeating. So it's kind of a subjective measure, but then if you're feeling that you're really very full to the point where you just start feeling uncomfortable, then at a point then it becomes what we call like overeating. Yeah, but again, this is very individual. It varies from person to person.
I see. Well, Derek, are there any health implications, both short-term and long-term, of overeating?
Of course, in a short run, you would tend to gain weight, because overeating, I guess, we have satiety cues in which it shows that, it's your body's way of telling you, oh, don't eat so much, So if you tend to overeat, then you will, of course, tend to gain weight because you're taking too many calories. And then that's on a short-term viewpoint. And a longer term viewpoint, of course, you may increase your risk of developing other diseases like diabetes and heart disease, which goes along with excessive weight gain. Yeah. So really overeating is something that you don't want to be doing too much of on a regular basis.
And so, Derek, with Chinese New Year coming up, what are some ways for people to avoid overeating yet still enjoy, of course, their favorite Chinese New Year delicacies?
Yeah, so a couple of tips. First of all, not to starve yourself before going to a house, and then because if you do that, you'll tend to kind of overeat when you do the visiting. Another thing is actually to portion out your treats. So, for instance, rather than taking the goodies directly from the container, you take out what you're going to be eating, like one pineapple tart, a small piece of bak kwa or something, and then you eat it, and then you finish it. Yeah. The other thing is to eat things mindfully. So we know that it takes about 20 minutes for the signal to go from your stomach to the brain to tell you that you're full. So if you eat something mindfully, eat it slowly, mindfully, your tendency of overeating will be much, much less. Yeah. And then you take less calories as well. So mindful eating, and then of course, remember to hydrate yourself adequately. A lot of people confuse thirst with hunger. And so, if you hydrate yourself adequately, then your tendency to eat more will actually be less. So those are kind of a couple of tips you want to have when you're going, during this Chinese New Year.
Well, those are some practical tips indeed from Derek Ong, accredited dietitian and founder of Eat Right Nutrition Consultancy and Clinic. Well, don't be too strict on yourself this Chinese New Year. Let yourself enjoy a prawn roll or two. I certainly will, but be sure to make every bite count. If you want to know how many calories those contain, check out our guide on CNY snacks at str.sg/livingwell. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. See you tomorrow on The Big Story.